In this video, we are going to be going over the second part of the counter-argument paragraph that we were just talking about together in class. Make sure that you have your copy of your answer sheet flipped over to the back, and anything that I have written on my answer sheet here on the screen, please make sure you add it to your answer sheet on your own piece of paper. So remember, for our counter argument today, the topic that we are focusing on are cell phones in school. And the directions on the front told us that we are writing a counter argument that argues against this claim. Cell phones should not be banned from LaRue County schools because kids can use them to play music and watch videos. When we were doing our opposing argument and our counter argument together in class, we decided that we were going to argue that screen time in schools would actually cause children to lose valuable social skills. So we've already cited our first piece of evidence, and now we're moving on to our second piece of evidence. When we are going to our second E1, we always want to start with an internal transition. Internal transitions are words that we use within our body paragraphs that help our audience move from our first E1 and E2 to our second E1 and E2. Internal transitions can be words as simple as also or next, or we can get a little bit fancy and we could use words like furthermore or additionally. I'm going to use the word furthermore for my internal transition here. So go ahead and write the word furthermore on your paper in that top box on the back. And after you write your internal transition, you should add a comma. So make sure you put that comma there. Now the next step, this is an E1, so we need to cite some more textual evidence from the passage. Remember, anytime we are citing text evidence, we want to have a good sentence starter like the text says or the passage states. We're going to put a comma after the word says, and then we're going to add some quotation marks. Remember, the job of the quotation marks is to show our audience that what we are about to say is not our own words. These are words that are coming from the passage. When we found our first piece of evidence together in class, we were looking at the article under the section that says students need face-to-face contact. We actually used the first little part of the text under that section of the article. For our second piece of evidence, I think that would be another great place to look, and I'm actually going to use the sentence that starts right under the sentence that we cited for our first piece of evidence. So it says, Angie Melton has 2 children in middle school. Her kids told her that their school allowed cell phones for a week, but almost no one talked at lunch. So this is another good piece of evidence to use because remember, we are trying to prove that if we had cell phones at school in LaRue County schools, then social skills or kids' ability to interact with each other would go down. And this is a perfect example of that. This is an actual school that allowed cell phones at school, and what they found was that when they did that, kids stopped talking to each other. So this is a good piece of evidence. I'm going to cite this directly, word for word from the text. You can either copy from your copy of the passage, or you can copy what I'm typing on the screen. So her kids told her that their school allowed phones for a week, but almost no one talked at lunch. And make sure you have your closing quotation marks at the end, because anytime we have opening quotation marks, we have to have our closing quotation marks. So this is going to be our evidence from the text. Our next step is to explain our evidence. So this is where we take what we cited up here at the top and we explain to our audience, how does this prove that if we had cell phones at school, it would cause kids to lose their valuable social skills. So a good way to start your E2 would be by saying this evidence proves, or this evidence shows, or this evidence provides. Provides is the word that I'm going to use here. This is an example, like I said, of a school that has allowed cell phones in their school. So I'm going to start by saying this evidence provides an example of what could happen at LaRue County. Let's change that at to in. What could happen in LaRue County schools if cell phones are allowed. Because like it says in the example, once you allow cell phones, people stop talking to each other. Now remember, we're not done because our E2s should always be at least 2 sentences long. A good little trick that I like to use when I'm writing my E2s, if I can't think of a way to start my second sentence, is I try to use the sentence starter not only, but also. So I'm going to say not only. Now remember, for our first E1, we talked about how kids would lose those valuable social skills that it talked about in that first piece of evidence, like being able to make friendships and learning to deal with uncomfortable situations. So I'm going to say not only will students lose key social skills, because that's what we talked about in our first E1 and E2, but also they may stop communicating altogether, because like it said in the school, they just stopped talking. So this evidence provides an example of what could happen in LaRue County schools if cell phones are allowed. Not only will students lose key social skills, but also they may stop communicating altogether. The last step of our paragraph is our concluding sentence. This is just something that we're going to use to wrap up all the ideas of our paragraph. One thing that I like to do in concluding sentences is leave my audience with something to think about. So I want my audience thinking, like, is this really what we want to happen in LaRue County schools? So that's exactly what I'm going to ask them. Is that really what is best for young people? Is it really good if they don't talk to each other at lunch at school? Make sure that what you have on your paper matches what you see on the screen here. And once you've done that, you are finished for today.